So again, if you can just double check that your volume is
Someone, when you came on slowly, it started to have the background noise. So someone's computer or someone's area that they're broadcasting from is causing the feedback.
So if you can just double check that. Yeah, everyone just click mute and
Yes.
you can unmute when you want to speak. Yeah.
That's what we would prefer you do.
Okay, so I'm not hearing the background noise now, so hopefully we have that. Can everyone else still hear me? Can you just give me a nod or a thumbs up if you got it, or just chat it out? Okay, I can see Carrie, can see a couple others. Thank you for your chats. Good. So we're gonna get started right away because we know that we have a nice webinar for you with a lot of different things. So we wanna make sure that we get through it, and we have some great videos too as well that we wanted to share with you. So again, Alicia Corr.
Lynn Shaw.
Sorry again. I think every week we're just making this an adventure. That's it. We want to keep you all on your toes.
That's what it's like in the classroom.
Exactly. All right. So coming live at you in Lynn's classroom. Again, you know by now how to chat it out. If anybody's new, all you have to do is click on the chat part up at the top, and everybody can see each other's chatting. So we did figure that out finally when we got our meeting stuff. Our webinar targets for tonight are?
We're going to discuss purposeful questions. We will define conceptual understanding and procedural, I can't say the word.
Procedural fluency. And this is a hot button issue.
Yeah.
Let me tell you, it came up a lot at the NCTM conference that I just came back from last Wednesday through Friday. So we got some great ideas for you on that.
We're going to also identify instructional strategies that promote problem solving and perseverance, and then we will examine formative assessment techniques to gather evidence in student thinking.
So kind of getting started, if you can just do in your chat, because we want to make sure that if you haven't done it before, can you give an example of a purposeful question that you've really posed in your classroom, even within the last week? If you can't think of something from in the last week, then just think of what is a purposeful question that you might have posed. So if you want to just chat that out. Purposeful questions do start on page 35. If you just need to go back in your book to kind of reference, or if you have your electronic copy on the side, that's where we kind of had a couple of ideas of different types of questions you can be using. Okay, good. So asking us to show like another way. So we're not just constricting it to one method. Excellent. Good. I love that when you say, well, prove it to me.
Yeah, I like that too. I do that a lot in my math class.
I always love when the kids go, are you kidding? Yes, prove it. Okay, good. Nice. I love it. I've been doing it quite a bit in my classroom when even the students are going, well, how do you know that is right? How do you know that? And I'm like, you're a first grader. That's awesome. So that it just always makes your day. Good. So there's lots of varieties of different types of questions. I like that we're not just cutting dry with one way, but you really, with the questions that you posed here, is like, how do you know that? Can you tell me more? What's another way to show? The proving it to me is huge too. So that was kind of just something to get us started within this first webinar today. Again, here are the 8 math teaching practices. I know I said it last week and also the week before. This is different than the Common Core math practices. These are for teaching practices. How can we really become solid mathematicians and math teachers using these teaching practices? So the 4 that are here, you can see, are the 4 that we're going to really focus on in this webinar today. So posing those purposeful questions, building that conceptual understanding, the procedural fluency, how to support productive struggle. That was another hot topic at NCTM. And then using evidence of that student thinking.
So math teaching practice number 5 is posing purposeful questions. And this is a quote, effective of what we believe shows what this practice is about. Effective teaching of mathematics uses purposeful questions to assess and advance students' reasoning and sense-making about important mathematical ideas and relationships. It's so different than what it used to be. You know, very much so in the past, it was very rote. And I think about when I first started teaching 23 years ago or so, it was very much just that here are some problems, you know, they're going to do them and you're going to do them over and over and over again until they get that procedure, that algorithm memorized essentially, but they don't understand the why they're doing it. And it isn't really in-depth thinking. That's what I think. I love the way math has changed in the last couple of years because of that. I think that gives us as teachers the opportunity to have students show us what they really know and that they're able to problem solve and that they're able to really understand the concept, not just the algorithm.
Sorry, my mouse kind of goes away every so often when it kind of idles. So I got to always wake it up and bring it back. So here are just some kind of purposeful questions that you can kind of think of posing within your classroom. And then in the Principles to Action book, if you look on pages 36 through 37, they kind of give you this chart on these posing purposeful questions. And what we did is we kind of combined the 2 charts that are on both pages into just the one. So you can kind of gather that information. You can probe their thinking a little bit. Somebody kind of had said that, you know, like how do you know this? How would you explain it in a different way? And I do that a lot if a student is doing like a math drawing to prove their answer, and I'm not really seeing it match up with what the problem was, I'll use a lot of that probing thinking. So that way I'm not just discounting what they're doing right away and saying yes or no, this is right. I want them to explain it to me more, because sometimes the way that I'm thinking about math is totally different than what they are. And it's interesting to see what they can kind of come up with. Again, making that math visual, you know, how are you picturing it in your mind? How are you solving it? What do you see? And then just seeing that reflection and that justification. Again, I think that comes about as well. You know, we want our students to really critique and analyze each other. And by having them reflect and justify their math, that kind of really helps them look at others and what they're doing, and notice too that there's not just one right answer for these math tasks or problems that you're having them do.
I think too, when you're posing purposeful questions, you're having that discussion in your classroom, and I think it's important that you know that you're going to go between back and forth between these different areas. It's not just staying in one spot all the time. You're going to move from area to area. And there's a discussion in the book about funneling. I don't know if you had the opportunity to read it, but funneling is, let's see, when the teacher, where did I lose it? I lost it now. Provides whether or not students are making sense of math. They just keep asking quick recall questions. That's funneling. And when we were discussing this, when Alicia and I were discussing this, there is a place for funneling. You know, you can go, especially if they're really struggling with a concept, you can go to that place, but as long as you don't stay in that place, you need to back out of that too. So it isn't necessarily all bad. Funneling isn't, you know, what we've been, and that really happened a lot, I think, in the past, where it's just real quick questions where you want a quick response, but it does have its place. And the other thing that you need to know too is I realize that you have to train your students to get to this point, and to have these good discussions with these purposeful questions. They struggle with it initially. It's very new to them, and they're going to have a hard time, and they're not going to feel comfortable, and they're not going to want to answer you. I know in my 7th grade classroom, I am constantly right now, this is where I'm at. I'm training them, and they just want to sometimes be spoon-fed, and you know, and they just want the quick, you know, answer. Yeah, they don't want to think about it and really think about why, and you know, and do that critiquing and discourse amongst their table. So just something to think about. It isn't going to happen overnight. It's going to take a lot of practice. I do think over the years it should get easier. I'm hoping that by the time I retire, it'll be easier. But
and I think Lynn is bringing up something really important. You know, it's not only a struggle for our students, it's a struggle for myself. I will be totally honest. I got into teaching to help students. I want to teach them, and that's what teachers want to do. But at the same time, it makes me uneasy when I have to sit there and ask a question, and then I get a blank stare at me. And I just want to help my little first graders be able to get it, you know, right away and know what Mrs. Korth knows, you know. But I also have to sit back and take a little bit of wait time and let them, you know, do that productive struggle too, and kind of think about that question. Sometimes I think they don't understand what I'm asking when actually they do. It's just that they're processing it, and it takes them a little bit more time to think about it in a different way. So I have to be patient myself. Right.
I think, you know, your book talks about there's 2 type of questioning patterns. There's the funneling and there's the focusing. And I think, and it's kind of like that video we showed last week with the teacher and counting. Yeah, one going back. I think it's a lot like that. Sometimes when you ask that question and they're all looking at you with blank stares, when it's a purposeful question and when you're doing the focusing, you have to backpedal and you have to go back to funneling, because if you're getting those blank stares, you're not going to have that discussion, and you're not going to get to where you want to get to anyway. And then just make sure that when you are at that point and they're starting to be involved in kind of understanding where you're going, that you back out of funneling and back into focusing. So just keep that in mind.
So again, this is right out of the book. You know, I think the book was really good at saying, you know, it's not necessarily bad and that you're doing the wrong thing if you haven't been doing this, but it's just trying to nudge you kind of to think of being more of a reflective practitioner too, and think of like, what are you going to be doing to be an effective math teacher? And then what would that look like for your students and stuff? So let's kind of think of and just kind of chat out, what do you want to work towards? And maybe what do you want to even have your students working towards as you're trying to put in these purposeful questionings? Good. Yeah, I'm with you on that one,
Wait
Tara.
time is it's really hard. Especially if you're under the clock with math. You know, like when I was in Bondwell, we had 44 minutes. I couldn't give a ton of wait time all the time because it would take forever, you know. So that's a hard one though. But I have this mental clock in my head of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, I go to 10, you know, so.
Yep. I even find sometimes when I give a problem and the students are so used to, you know, asking the questions and having me ask questions and then we'll solve it right away. I love having those problems where they actually have to take a day or two. They literally come in the morning. They just got off their jacket and they're like, are we solving the problem? Are we going to do it right now? And I'm like, honey, we have to get lunch. Okay, then we're going to solve the problem, right away. So it just makes them want to come back in and do more with it. It's great. Good. I think you're right on that. The students explaining. We have that in our notes too. You know, it's not us just answering and asking questions. It's the students working together. So you're hitting it right on the head. Like the students are the ones that are in control, and we're just kind of help facilitating it around and making sure, you know, that they're still asking those questions and solving.
And I think if you know, one of the probably the best things that I've ever had in my classroom is a document camera, because I think that allows you to very quickly show their work without them having, like I used to always have them go to the board and write their problems on the board, but that takes more time. With a document camera, they can just throw their assignment underneath the document camera and share it. And then they can explain what they did and how they did it. And it's cool because you know, if there are many different kids in my classroom and if they all solve things in a different way, you're able to see that.
Mm-hmm.
So
absolutely. Good. So here is just a quick video that we wanted to bring up on YouTube. Yes, it's about a program. It's with Conceptua, but what we liked about it, not we're trying to sell Conceptua, but we really like the rich discussion that's taking place. Yes, it's like a middle school level, but we just really liked how the teacher had it set up and the students. So we're going to watch this little video.
Alright guys, today we're going to learn to estimate the location of fractions on a number line using benchmarks. How are these fraction models the same? How are these fraction models different? Or you can think about it to yourself. Talk to your partners.
They would all be the same thing, but different fraction. And how they different is that at different numbers uses different fractions.
5, 6 is closest to 1. Let's go because I have 5 out of 6. 6, yeah. And now 1, 6. So the closest one is
There's been a dream of high-quality math education that some have shared since the late 70s, into the 80s, the 90s. Now we've got these common core standards of mathematical practice that really communicate what math education can look like in an elementary classroom. We want people to see that. We want them to see the rich interactions, the clear learning trajectory that's taking place, and the confidence in both students and teachers that's possible when things go the right way.
Alright, do you agree with MJ? Thumbs up, thumbs down. Alright, Damon, come show me how to build 1, 6. And explain to me what you did. I divided it into 6 pieces because the denominator is 6, and I shaded 1 because the numerator is 1, and that's how we shade. Awesome job. And do we agree? Yes. Alright, check it. It initiates wonderful conversations in my classroom. Seeing where my children are, knowing where they're at, hearing them reason and justify and argue mathematically back and forth, seeing those moments when the light bulb goes off, knowing that they know it and that they can prove it to one another. That's what I love about Conceptua.
1, 6 goes to close to 0, and 3, 6 goes under the half, because half of 6 is 3, and then 5 is close to the whole, almost a whole.
Because I think that I like know it, I think the color diagram is close to
Yes.
so close to the whole thing. Yeah.
classroom dialogue is the heart of knowing whether or not a student understands math or not. And if a teacher asks a question, we've got to hear the students talk about their thinking and reason about the math. And if we can have good discussions where children are making sense of the math rather than teachers telling, to me, that's a rich discussion.
All right, so we're gonna post the rest of this up on the website
On our
on
Edmodo.
Edmodo. But just for the time's sake, like we said, we thought that was kind of a nice stopping point because it just reaffirmed, you know, where the teacher can lead with the questioning and stuff, but it's really the students that are creating those rich discussions. And even like the one girl, you know, she had stated, you know, what her thinking was, and then the other girl was trying to reason with her and justify her answer. It just, questioning kind of just goes hand in hand with bringing those rich, meaningful discussions in play. So kind of thinking about just a little part that we did see, what did you notice about this? What did you like about it? Mm-hmm. I have a new app. I think it's called, I'll put it out on the chat and I'll put it up on Edmodo. It's an Explain Everything app, and it can do, go on your iPad, and it's really nice because you can be walking around and you can actually take a video or you can take a picture. You can write on what the child is saying or what their partners are saying, or you even have the video, and then you can actually put them all in like one page together, and then you can have the student, you can put it up on your smartboard or share it underneath your document camera, and then you have all those different rich examples that you wanted to share, and you can create that discourse, like somebody had written down that discourse among the students, then students can kind of talk about the different examples that you're then putting out, or they can partner talk and stuff. And I think that was key. You guys really brought up a couple of things. Those were the really rich about that.
That conversation is really important. And I think because students really learn best from other students. And that conversation that they can have where they're discussing, it's so cool. You know, in my room, when it happens, we talk a lot, and, you know, I don't do a whole lot of talking, they do the talking, but there's a lot of communication and conversation that occurs. And when they can learn to do it, and again, it takes time to get them there. So don't think that you can do it tomorrow and then boom, you know, it'll be perfect, because it won't. But when they can do that, and they can say, hey, this is why I did what I did, and then the other person will say, well, you know, this doesn't quite make sense to me, and they can have that conversation. They really learn so much, and they learn about math, and they learn from each other, and they're having those great conversations. So if you can do that, the more you can do that, the better.
Good. So here we wanted to kind of highlight again in the Common Core State Standards, you know, what it is really saying within the math area.
So our focus is, we focus strongly on this standards focus, where the standards are focused. Coherence to think across grades and link to major topics in each grade. I think that area for sure is difficult sometimes, because even Alicia and I, when we were making this webinar, some of the things she was saying, I'm like, oh, well, that is, you know, that leads right into something I'm doing. But we don't, I was just talking to the other seventh grade math teacher here in in London, and I don't know, because I'm new here, I don't know what happens in the high school math program, and I would like to know that, so I can make sure that we're, you know, getting them where they would like them to be as well. And it's only going to be beneficial to the students if we can keep it coherent and on the same page. But I don't know what they do, and I think, unfortunately, in the world that we live in, time is so hard to find, you know. And being able to have conversations, not just amongst your grade, like we have grade level PLCs, and we also have building level math PLCs here in New London. But I think it's important that you extend beyond this middle level, 5, 6, 7, 8. That, you know, we have an opportunity to talk to the elementary teachers and find out what's going on in their classroom. And also that we have an opportunity to talk to the high school teachers and find out what's going on in their classroom, so that, you know where you're coming from and where you're going. And then rigor, you know, it's hard. It's supposed to be hard. You know, math is messy and math is hard. So, you know, the rigor and the major topics you need to pursue with equal intensity. You need to show that conceptual understanding, making sure that they understand why, the how and the why it works, and that they justify it. And then the procedural fluency, skill and fluency, and then applying it. So.
And this kind of leads us right into then this whole idea of the Math Teaching 6 practice. As you can see, it's really hitting hot and heavy on that building procedural fluency and the conceptual understanding. So in our first webinar, we brought in this braid, if you will, and you can see the 5 kind of main areas within it. I might have touched on this in the first webinar, but in the United States, we really pulled heavily on that procedural fluency.
Mm-hmm.
And when you pull on a braid and you only pull on one strand, the braid falls apart. Okay? So in the United States, we wanted that procedural fluency. We wanted it rote. We wanted it now. We wanted it memorized. We wanted it fast. And what we're finding is, and Lynn alluded to it earlier, that when you are trying to memorize these facts and you're trying to have it fast, there is no reasoning or any math concept or idea of quantity even built behind that then. So then when it came, these kids are doing like a time test or throwing out these empty facts, if you will, really fast, and then they had to apply them to an actual task, and their teachers were coming back and saying they don't know their facts. And the younger teachers were saying, of course they do. They could complete it within 3 minutes. We gave them 100 and they got them done. So what we were finding is that conceptual understanding was never built. So if you will, if you take anything really heavily today, is this: we need to have all 5 of these strands working together. And when you have those 5 strands working together, that's when you really have a solid, rigorous mathematician of a student. And I see a couple people had chatted a little bit. Yes.
The algorithms.
Yeah.
See that algorithm, it's interesting because the manipulatives, you know, I use manipulatives in my 7th grade classroom and they love them. Love them. They just think it's the coolest thing to be able to use. And that helps them see why it works the way that it works. You know, I was just at, I had a funeral I had to go to yesterday, and I was talking to my sister at the luncheon, and my sister was saying she has a daughter that's a freshman, and my son is a freshman too, and her daughter's in algebra, and she was saying that she doesn't like this, and somebody else had commented across the room, the new math, and I said to my sister, it's not new, it's the same, it's no different, it's just that, you know, we're expecting them to show why they understand it, and my sister said to me, well, why can't we just do it the way we taught it? And I said, because do you know why you cross multiply and divide, Renee? You know, and you don't know. You memorize that algorithm and you have no idea why you do it. And if they can understand that why, they can apply it to almost everything else that they do. So it's so important. And Alicia was right. That procedural fluency, that was the big thing. It's like Ellie, that video I put up on Edmodo that first week. You know, Ellie said she always was told she was an excellent math student because she could do it and she could do it fast. She memorized it and she could do it fast, but that didn't make her a good math student, you know, and then later on in life she was struggling. So I think that's kind of where we are, and that's why we're doing what we're doing.
So kind of going further into Math Practice 6, like we said, we're going to show you a lot of different graphic organizers tonight. This is just one kind of idea. If you kind of put that conceptual understanding in the middle, or what have you, you could put multiplication in the middle or anything. Here we obviously chose conceptual understanding, and we kind of just put out a definition, but then if you're thinking about it, what are some examples of that? What would non-examples be? What are the characteristics of that?
Thanks, Sarah. Okay.
All right. I'm just going to keep moving on. I don't know if people had heard me say, like, you could tweet out some facts or characteristics on it.
I do. I actually, this was my last, in chapter 3, our chapter 3 was expressions and equations, and I did Frayer models for their math vocabulary. My SLO is on math vocabulary because I think too often we don't pay attention to it, and kids don't pay attention to it. I know I do. It's a big deal with me, but they didn't know enough when I started, so I decided that was an area that I wanted to work on. And I've always done vocabulary every chapter and done some sort of a graphic organizer, but I just did this Frayer model. And it's an interesting fact I just heard or read somewhere just yesterday or the day before that the Frayer model was actually created by a professor at UWM at Madison. So it's kind of cool, but it's great. It's an excellent tool, And when I tell kids too, when you get to the facts and characteristics, I just tell them, when are you going to use it? When do you use this? What does it look like when you use it? How do you use it? You know, anything like that, and that works.
Good. I see a lot of people have put out that they use this or if they've seen it. Again, somebody had put out that 50% of their students are more than likely also with a reading intervention, and we see that a lot.
We do.
It's very common. Yeah, we're doing a poverty book study as well, and it's interesting the correlations you can see kind of between both. And
Right.
and we're having some discussions in my building, in my elementary building, as to why we might think that might be happening and stuff. So
This is the other thing that we wanted to make sure that we talk about, and it's just that math builds. You know, when everything that you learn, and you guys all know that when you are taught something in one chapter, it doesn't just go away. You have to do it again, and you're going to do it again, and you have to have that deep understanding to be able to apply it to the things that are coming in the future. I tell that to my students all the time, that 7th grade math is really the foundation of everything that they are going to do for the rest of their lives in math, because you have, 8th grade math, which is more like a pre-algebra, and I think 7th grade math is like a pre-algebra. And then you get into algebra and algebra 2 and geometry and analysis and calculus, and all of it builds. And I said, that foundation is so important. And then when Alicia and I were meeting, it was interesting because, like I said, some of the activities, and we're going to talk about something here too today, that it starts really at the elementary school in 1st grade. And those concepts that they're learning in 1st grade are essential for them to be successful throughout elementary school and then into middle school. So you have to make sure that there's a good understanding and a deep understanding.
like I said, we'll put some of these different graphic organizers out. Here's just another idea of what somebody had brought up with conceptual understanding, where you can put that definition and characteristics of it. Here, again, if you look at these, you have to think, is this really showing conceptual understanding? Love this when I taught 2nd grade, loved it. So cute. And then you're thinking, oh, am I really teaching them something behind it, or am I just showing them a cute little method to, put one on the top and stop? And then I had kids trying to highlight it in yellow and red because that's what was on the chart. And my cute little helping poster really wasn't helping them understand conceptually behind it. Even my time tests that I did in the beginning. Time tests are very different in Mrs. Gorth's class now because I'm looking for their understanding. And we'll get into that a little bit further as we go on.
Mm-hmm.
So again, here are just some of those purposeful questions that we said, how you can pose things, showing different examples, explaining, using different manipulatives.
Right.
Or resources to show their understanding of that fluency and their conceptual thinking is huge.
If you think of these beginning words here that are underlined, how is it? Show me why. Explain to me. Those are all great words to start your sentences or your questions with your students. Why is this? Show me why. How does this work? if you can do that, I mean, my students will tell you, I ask them why and how, and constantly they're like, do you know any other words, Mrs. Scholl? But it's constant. I am constantly asking those questions, and they say to me, you know, today it was great because one of my classes was just nailing what I was asking them, and I said, see, now your vocabulary skills have because they were even using the right vocabulary, so I was so happy. But you know, it shows that they have that understanding, and they, I don't know, it's cool. So it's really cool when it does work. It gives you goosebumps.
So again, these are just some different organizers that you can use to build those conceptual understandings. We will post this. So if you're trying to take notes, we'll have it up on the website for you.
So go ahead. So the Frayer model is the example that we just talked about. So that's something that you can use. It's great if it's used for vocabulary.
Moving you along.
That's okay. And this is just another example of something that a Frayer model in a unique way or a different way. Concept circles. It's funny because Alicia and I were when we were researching for this webinar, we came across concept circles, and neither one of us really had used them before. No. And then because I wanted to see how it would work for this webinar, so I could tell you something about it. And it really is quite cool, you know, especially when you do have, like they showed you the relationship of the different angles, or when you have a heavy vocabulary unit. That works really nice to be able to show what that is. You know, it does work well. So, and then the example on the right was one that you had too. This is another compare and contrast organizer that we have too.
And we just use it, like you can see, there's an area perimeter. It just kind of helps students also visualize sometimes, you know, what's the difference between them? How, again, are they related and stuff like that. So here's another fun one that we found. I've used this before with my students. I'm actually doing a turkey project right now with it, where students can make their own story problem, and then they do the picture of it. They can write it, the number, in different ways, how to model it with other tools and stuff. Like I said, you can use this even not in elementary. You could probably even use it, you know, going up into middle school.
I use this with ratios and proportions in the RP chapter, because I have them create a word problem that contain a real life word problem that would apply in their lives, and they have to use a ratio in it to solve. And we use the same thing, and it works great. And they have to show it in multiple ways. So it really is an awesome tool.
So this is an example, and I'll actually put a Word document attached on Edmodo with this. This is what I use now as part of my fluency checks, if you will. I don't do the time test like I used to do, where I only get a certain amount of time. I actually time up, if you will. So everybody gets as much time as they need, within reason, of course. And what I'm going around and doing is I'm putting a check, or not a check, but like a symbol. So like I put an F in the top corner of some of my students to show that they were using fingers, or I'll put a CO for counting on, or I'll put an M because they were using manipulatives. And I just write little notes then on the side. I'll date it. And as you can see then, even from this example, it shows the different conceptual fluency that they're using, or conceptual understanding they're using. And then also I then have an idea fluently, are they getting better on their time? Are they taking longer? What are they using? What's a strategy that I see them being more effective with? So then I can even have those discussions with my students as well. But I'll put this out on Edmodo's as an attachment too.
I'm talking, I can't speak. Two of the things that we didn't talk about that we don't really have necessarily examples for. One of them is a Convince Me, and in the RP module for WSME, Wisconsin State Math Initiative, Jen Koziak and Doug Burge created a Convince Me document. I use it all of the time in my classroom. All a Convince Me is, and I'm going to post it up on Edmodo, but all a Convince Me is for a piece of paper divided into 4 parts, and they have to solve a problem, and they have to solve it 4 different ways. So I often will give like word problems. It was funny because I was talking to my class today about different things they've done so far this year that they've enjoyed, and this is one of the things that they mentioned. I will give them a list of word problems that has something to do with the topic that we're working on. They come back the next day, and then I put them into groups to show that problem, and then they have to create a convince me. And so they have that discussion within their group. So how did you solve it? How did I solve it? And maybe we only came up with 3 ways in our group, and now we have to together think of a 4th way. And the idea is for them to try to think of 4 different ways to solve their problem. And they can use anything. They can use tables, they can use drawings, they can use, you know, the algorithm, the math, the algebra, or whatever that might be. And it works so well. You know, it is absolutely phenomenal. Sometimes I'll have them make posters on big Post-it note, take board paper or whatever, and sometimes I won't. Sometimes we'll just do it on the sheet that says convince me on it, and they'll throw it underneath the document camera. It really just depends on the time that we have, but that's awesome. And the other thing that's mentioned is number talks. I think that really is essential in building that number sense, and that, you know, so they have a good understanding of what they can do with numbers and how they can manipulate them to make it easier. And, you know, some students really struggle with that. So I think if you can do that every day for just a few minutes at the beginning of your class, there's the Number Talks book, or the Why or Making Number Talks Matter. Both of them are, I have both of them. Both of them are excellent resources. Oh,
Number Talks, from what I've done, and I've just started reading into the book, like you can have, say in my first grade class, I can say, okay, show me the number 28. And they could do different ways of representing it. And then what the students do is they actually, they talk about how they got it, what they used, how they saw it, maybe in groups of 5. Like they could have 5 groups of 5, and then there's 3 more. Or they could have 2 groups of 10 and 8 more ones. Or there's just different ways. And it just helps build that number sense for students and how they are representing it. Yes, I would definitely recommend it.
And it is mental math in a way, but
yes.
Initially when you're starting it, the students probably aren't going to do it mentally, because they have to take a look of how they're going to break it apart. So it's like if you have, you know, 23 plus 77, okay? Instead of doing that algorithm where you carry the 1 and, you know, whatever, you take, okay, I can take the 3 away from the 20, add it to my 77, that makes that 80, and then I can add the 20 plus, you know, 80 is going to give me then my 100. So it's a very cool way of students being able to just manipulate numbers to be able to mentally solve math problems and not have to reach for the calculator all the time, because that's what they always want to do. So they do. Can I use a calculator on that? No.
So here are just some ideas to kind of think of, you know, and I just want you to kind of think in the back of your mind. You don't have to chat out or anything, but if we're building this whole idea of conceptual understanding along with that procedural fluency, you know, really think and reflect on how is that really going to help you as an educator, and how is it helping your students really? That's our main goal. You know, we really want our students to build that fluency and that understanding. So we'll pose that question also out on Edmodo just to kind of carry on that discussion. Like I said, we have a lot to show you tonight. So here's that whole idea of fluency. We want it to be flexible. We want some accuracy and efficiently and appropriately. And a session that I went to last week, they brought up these 4 and they said, well, is that really a time test? You know, what does a time test really hit on out of these 4? And a lot of people were like, well, you're looking for accuracy. They're not flexible. Most might not be efficient. And you might not find an appropriate strategy that they're using. So procedural fluency now is hitting on all 4 of these. And if we're giving them a chance to build that procedural understanding, or the conceptual understanding, I keep flipping them tonight, and really building in those strategies and being able to have that number discussion, then that's going to really bring about this fluency. And you'll notice students now, when they can use strategies, they get to be really fast at them. Like my students that are, some of them are really fast at counting on. They just go boom, boom, boom from like 5 and add on 3 more, and all of a sudden they've got 8. So just because they're using a strategy doesn't mean that they're going to be slow with it either. So then here were some other ideas that we had talked about. We already talked about the convince me. We're going to show you actually the strategy harvest. This is an example that Lynn had done.
Yeah, this is just there are 4 times as many Packer fans than Viking fans in 6th grade. If there are 66 graders, how many Packer fans are there in 6th grade? This is really, and this really could be done not only in 6th grade, but 7th grade too. And we would do it algebraically. If you do something like that, and if you want to flip that, yeah, click, you could have multiple, these are just some multiple representations of options that students could come up with to solve that problem. You have, you can have just like a drawing where you're sketching out your information in A. B is a double number line, which is awesome. And then C, you have that tape diagram. D is like a proportion. And E is a table. And then F, you can graph it, which most people don't even think about that as being a possibility, but you can graph it. And then you also have just another way of mathematically calculating the part of a whole. So it's very cool. You have an opportunity as a teacher. When I was in school, it was always, it has to be this way. And Mr. Heller, God rest his soul, because he's no longer with us, but Mr. Heller was a great teacher, but I would say to him, why do I have to do that? And he would just, because this is the way you're going to do it. And I never really got those answers as to why we were doing what we were doing. So anyway, I think it's really important that if you can allow students to have an opportunity to have those multiple representations, I think it is extremely beneficial. And there really is no right or wrong way.
So this was just another way that you could kind of build in. If you've never played the game 24, there's lots of variations out there. This is another way that you can build in that number sense and build on just that procedural fluency as well. Again, just some ideas that they had came up with in Principles to Action on this whole idea with building that procedural fluency. Productive struggle, this is huge right now. We've even brought it up a lot in our discussions, and I know we're almost at 5, so we're not going to go over because valuable time with teachers. But there was a lot in this. But productive struggle is, it's okay for your students to get stumped a little bit and giving them time to really think, okay, what do I know about the problem? What do I want to keep working towards in this problem? Even kind of reviewing what they've already seen and done can sometimes help them then release, oh, this is where I want to go next.
It's very difficult because, as Alicia said before, we as teachers want to help them because that's what we got into teaching. But you have to allow them to productively struggle. And I tell my students, like today they were working on something in groups and I wouldn't tell them. They wanted me, I don't understand this. No, what don't you understand? Well, I just don't get it. Don't get what? They don't want to struggle. Some students just don't want to, and they have to. It's going to make them better students and better math students in the long run.
You want me to put the 8? Because we have. So here are just some different strategies that we had said that you could kind of take with this productive struggle. My favorite know is a video that we're going to show up on Edmodo and stuff, and it's a cute little video of how to not just say no to something with our students. We're kind of just going through then, as you are doing these different productive struggles, we want to kind of have, again, that focused questioning again. Questions are huge. I think this all kind of ties in, right? Those last 4 that we're talking on today just tie
really
in
hand.
really well with each other. So again, here are just some of those key questions of like, what do you know? What's challenging about this? Go back through your steps. Sometimes that just reviewing what I've already done helps them to see, oh, this is something I haven't tried yet. Again, this is just an equation that I kind of do when I'm using, when I'm talking about horses with my students. And it's funny because I showed this to a high school teacher and he was like, hey, that's kind of starting out like algebra and like terms.
It's like terms.
Like, yeah, I do that with first grade. He's like, what?
Yeah.
He's like, that's so cool. So it's good like to have those cohesive discussions, like you said. Math practice 8 was really using student thinking and using evidence of their thinking. We as teachers want to know what the students know and what they're doing to help and show evidence of their learning.
So this is a definition that we took off of the Wisconsin RTI Center, which is a site I go to a lot. Formative assessment is a deliberate process used by teachers and students during instruction that provides actionable feedback that is used to adjust ongoing teaching and learning strategies to improve teachers and students' self-assessment, reflection, and attainment of curricular learning targets and goals. That formative assessment is essential in your classroom. It's the dipstick, you know. I'm just going to check and see if they are where they need to be and understand what I'm doing. And the teacher in the video that we saw, the thumbs up, give me a thumbs up if you think, you know, if you agree or things like that. That is a great tool, and it's simple and quick. But that you really do need to have that formative assessment. I use exit slips. We're going to talk about, there's a bunch of them that we have coming up. You can do you can do fact agreement circles. Fact agreement circles. That's one option. And so you read a statement, and the students stay in a big circle. Stay in the big circle if they agree, or move to an inner circle if they disagree. And then you have that conversation. And then you also have the concept sort. This is something that I'm sure a lot of teachers use. I use it a lot. I actually use it with vocabulary when we're looking at different systems or different types of vocabulary in math.
I'm going to go through two to the exit slips that you were talking about. This is just something that I even use in my classroom. If I'm trying to see what they knew, they put it up on their number in my class, so then I can kind of gauge who got it and who still is struggling with an idea of what we're working on.
And the baskets, the red, green, and yellow basket, and the paper plates. When I was in Bondwell, I used the paper plates, and I gave kids Post-it notes. And if I did an exit slip or a type of exit slip, they would put their, I get it, I don't get it, or I get it as I'm ready to roll. If that's green, I'm a little unsure, that's yellow, and I am lost, that's red. And they would put their Post-it note of where they belonged on the paper plates. So I had paper plates around my room. This year, I'm using baskets, the red, green, and yellow baskets. And I'm actually having them, instead of just saying that they understand it or don't, I'm having them actually work out that problem. And they do put it in the basket that they feel they belong in, red, yellow, or green. But then it at least gives me an opportunity to look at that slip to see if they really do understand it. So
here are just some things to kind of reflect on. In the Principles to Action book, they gave you this chart of like what a teacher would look like, what are the students doing if they're really showing evidence of their thinking. We're going to post this video up. This was just our nice way of kind of summing up what we wanted you to think of in reflecting as math teachers, of maybe in kind of an old school classroom, if you will, where the teacher is teaching everything and it's my way or the highway kind of thing, versus what we are hoping that your classroom will kind of look like today or even after this book study. So that is the end and wrap up of Principles to Action. I'm sorry that it did go over a little bit tonight. Like we said, we had a lot to sum up in these last four. It's a very heavy last four math teaching practices. So sorry if it was a little rushed, but like we said, we wanted to get you out in a nice time. We really appreciate you coming these last 3 weeks, and we hope to further that discussion in the week to come. There will also probably be a survey that is sent out just so, we're trying to be reflective practitioners and find out too what you enjoyed about the webinars and anything that we can help to benefit you, because that's why we're here. We wanted to help benefit you. So thank you so much for your time, and we'll kind of go through your chats and stick around for a few minutes too. So thanks again. We'll see you in Edmodo this upcoming week. Look on Edmodo this week too, because we'll have even more of these graphic organizers and other tasks and activities, and I'll put up some apps and books that I got while I was away too this week, so that way we can share that out to you.
The thing is, the things that we're going to put up there are things that you can print off and use right away in your classroom. Yep. So it really will be beneficial to you. I know as a teacher that really is invaluable, if you can have those things to use. So that's our hope that we can do that. And Sarah had mentioned allowing students to struggle, that it's okay for them to make mistakes and it's okay for them to struggle. And I do agree with that. But I think they don't want to struggle. And I know when they get into my grade level, 7th grade, it's hard because they, as a 7th grader, they also, you're walking that fine line because they can immediately shut down because they, at 7th grade, get bucky, and they get a little sassy. And
Seventh
so
grade, I don't know. I'm a 3rd grader.
so they can tend to, I'm not going to do this or whatever. I got that today from a girl, whatever, because I wouldn't help it, whatever. I'm like, hey, don't get sassy with me. So, I
love
think
that my brain just grew.
yeah, I do think it's really beneficial.
Nice.
Though.
Very nice. Love that.
Oh, that's great that you did that. Writing productive struggle on your board and then talking about what that means. That's awesome. I tell my 7th graders all the time, well, you need to productively struggle a little bit. And they don't like to do that, but.
Mm. Yeah, there's that uncomfortable or awkward waiting, and we don't even like that ourselves because we want to be helpful. So good for you.
Mm-hmm.
All right, well, thank you again. We'll see you guys in Edmodo Land.
Yep.
See ya.
Bye.
Bye.
Have a nice week.